The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was older than most civilizations. Its walls were made of a strange black stone that seemed to drink in light. Thousands of seats rose in circles around a central platform where speakers would stand. Today, every seat was filled. Ambassador Elara Chen stood near the back of the human section. She was a small woman with gray hair and calm eyes. She had served humanity for 40 years in the diplomatic corps. She had seen wars begin and end. She had watched empires rise and fall, but she had never seen the council this afraid. The reason for their fear sat in the largest section of the hall. The Nigma. They were insectoid creatures, standing nearly 3 meters tall. Their bodies were covered in black armor that was part of their skin. They had 4 arms, each ending in claws that could cut through metal. Their eyes were red and showed no emotion. They did not sit in their seats. They stood, because sitting was a sign of weakness in their culture. The Nigma Empire had conquered 17 species in the past 100 years. They did not negotiate. They did not trade. They simply took what they wanted. And now, their territory had expanded to the edge of human space. The council speaker, an ancient being from the Veth species, raised his thin arms for silence. The Veth were one of the oldest races in the galaxy. They had seen civilizations come and go like seasons. "We are here to discuss the expansion of the Nigma Empire," the speaker said. His voice was soft but carried through the hall. "And to hear from a species that has requested the right to speak. The humans." A wave of quiet laughter came from the Nigma section. Humans were new to the galactic stage. They had only been traveling between stars for 800 years. They controlled maybe 50 systems. To the Nigma, they were children playing at civilization. Elara walked down to the central platform. Her footsteps echoed in the silence. She could feel thousands of eyes on her, but her heart remained steady. She had prepared for this moment for months. "Honored members of the council," she began. "I come with a simple message for the Nigma Empire." She turned to face the Nigma section directly. The High Executor of the Nigma, a massive creature named Keth Vorn, stared down at her with those empty red eyes. "Do not attack human space," Elara said. Her voice was calm and clear. "Do not raid our colonies. Do not harm our people. If you do, we will respond, and you will not survive." For a moment, there was complete silence. Then the Nigma began to make a sound that passed for laughter among their kind. It was a clicking, grinding noise that filled the hall. Keth Vorn stepped forward. He was even larger than the others, his black armor scarred from 100 battles. "Little human," he said. His voice was deep and harsh. "Your species is soft. You have no claws, no armor. You live for barely a century. What could you possibly do to threaten the Nigma Empire?" Elara did not step back. She did not show any fear. "We are giving you this warning because we do not wish to fight. But if you force us to fight, we will not stop until the Nigma Empire is nothing but a memory." More laughter from the Nigma. But Elara noticed that other sections of the council had gone very quiet. The Veth speaker had closed his eyes, as if remembering something painful. The crystalline accord, another ancient species, had dimmed their lights in what seemed like concern. After the session ended, Elara was approached by the Veth speaker in a private corridor. "You have delivered your warning," the old being said. "But the Nigma will not listen. They never do." "I know," Elara replied. "But the warning was not really for them." "Oh?" "It was for history. When this is over, no one will be able to say we did not give them a chance." The speaker studied her with his ancient eyes. "I have lived for 3,000 years, Ambassador. I have seen many species make threats. Most of them are empty words. Ours are not." "I know." The speaker's voice became soft. "I have studied your people, Ambassador Chen. I have read your history. Not the version you share with the galaxy, the real one." He paused. "You terrify me." Elara said nothing. "The Nigma think they are warriors because they conquer," the speaker continued. "But your species, you have spent your entire existence fighting yourselves. You have perfected the art of destruction in ways the Nigma cannot imagine, and yet you choose peace. That is what makes you dangerous. You know what you are capable of, and you choose to hold it back." "We do not want this war," Elara said quietly. "I believe you. But you will fight it anyway, and you will win." The speaker turned to leave. "I tried to warn the Nigma privately. They would not listen. Perhaps when they see what humans truly are, other aggressive species will learn the lesson." 3 days later, Ilara received a communication from Earth Command. A Nigma scout fleet had been detected entering human space. They were heading for a farming colony called New Carthage. 2.3 million people lived on New Carthage. Families, children, farmers who had left Earth to build a new life among the stars. Ilara read the message twice. Then she sent a single reply. Begin evacuation. Activate Protocol Omega. She stood by her window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Nigma were about to make the worst mistake in their history. She had given them every chance to turn back. They had chosen to laugh. Ilara thought about the old Earth, saying, "Those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it." The Nigma had never learned about human history. Not really. They had seen the peaceful traders, the diplomats, the scientists. They had seen humans who smiled and negotiated and sought friendship with other species. They had not seen what lay beneath, the thing that humans kept locked away, buried under centuries of civilization, the ancient inheritance of a species that had clawed its way to the top of a hostile world by being the most adaptable, most persistent, and most dangerous predator their planet had ever produced. The Nigma were about to wake that sleeping monster. Ilara closed her eyes. "We warned you," she whispered to the empty room. "Remember that. We warned you." Far away, in the cold darkness of space, the Nigma fleet moved toward New Carthage. The soldiers aboard those ships were eager for conquest. They expected an easy victory. They expected the humans to run or surrender. They had no idea what was coming. The first war between humanity and the Nigma Empire was about to begin. It would not be long. It would not be fair. And when it was over, the galaxy would never look at humans the same way again. But first, the Nigma had to learn their lesson. And humanity was about to become their teacher. The Nigma fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the New Carthage system. Fleet Commander Zex Koth stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the planet grow larger on the screens. It was a green and blue world, covered with farms and small cities. Easy prey. His fleet consisted of 40 warships, more than enough to crush a farming colony. The Nigma had done this many times before. They would destroy any orbital defenses, land their troops, and either capture or kill everyone on the surface. Simple, clean, efficient. Begin the approach. Zexkoth ordered. Prepare landing forces. His ships moved toward the planet in formation. The commander expected to see human defense ships rushing to meet them. He expected desperate calls for surrender. He expected fear. Instead, he found silence. As they got closer, his sensors began picking up strange readings. The planet's orbit was filled with thousands of small objects. At first, he thought they were satellites. Then his tactical officer realized the truth. "Commander," the officer said, his voice uncertain. "They are weapons platforms, automated, thousands of them." Zexkoth made a dismissive sound. "Machines cannot fight like warriors. Destroy them." The fleet opened fire. The platforms began to die in flashes of light. But for every one they destroyed, 2 more seemed to appear from behind the planet's moon. And then, the platforms started shooting back. They were not powerful weapons. Each platform carried only a few missiles and a small energy cannon. But there were so many of them. They swarmed around the Nigma ships like angry insects, striking from every direction at once. Within an hour, Zexkoth had lost 6 ships. Not destroyed, but damaged badly enough that they could not continue the fight. He had never lost 6 ships to a farming colony before. "Push through," he ordered. "Land the troops." The remaining ships fought their way to orbit. Transport vessels descended toward the surface, carrying 10,000 Nigma warriors. They expected to find humans hiding in their homes, waiting to be captured. They found empty cities. The first reports came back quickly. No contact with the enemy. All structures are abandoned. The humans are gone. Zexkoth felt something he had not felt in many years. Confusion. Where were they? His scouts spread out across the planet, searching the cities, the farms, the underground shelters. Everything was empty. The humans had taken everything they could carry and left. Then the traps began to trigger. A squad entered a warehouse and the floor collapsed, dropping them into a pit filled with some kind of burning chemical. Another squad tried to access a computer terminal, and the entire building exploded. Roads that looked solid gave way under the weight of Nigma soldiers. Water supplies were poisoned. Power stations were rigged to overload. The humans had not just left. They had turned their entire world into a weapon. On the second day, a message began playing across every Nigma communication device. It was a human voice, calm and cold. You were warned. What follows is your choice. Leave now and never return. Stay, and there will be no mercy. Zexkoth destroyed the communication device in rage. Find them, he screamed at his officers. Find where they are hiding. But there was no one to find. The humans had evacuated 2.3 million people in less than a week. They had moved them to ships waiting beyond the system's edge. And then they had left nothing but death behind. By the third day, Zexkoth had lost over 2,000 soldiers to traps and automated defenses. He had gained nothing. The planet was worthless now. The farms were burned. The cities were dangerous to enter. There was no food, no resources, no slaves to capture. He ordered a withdrawal. Back on the Nigma homeworld, the High Council met to discuss the battle. Keth Vorn, the High Executor, listened to the reports with growing anger. We lost ships to a farming colony, he demanded. We lost warriors to traps? The humans fight without honor, one of his generals said. They do not face us directly. They hide and use tricks. Then we will teach them to face us, Keth Vorn declared. Prepare the invasion fleets. We will strike at their core worlds. We will find their families and their children. We will show them what happens to species that resist the Nigma Empire. The council agreed. Within a month, a massive fleet would be assembled. 200 warships, 500,000 warriors. They would crush the humans completely. What the Nigma did not know was that they had already lost. While they celebrated their victory at New Carthage, human special operations teams were already deep inside Nigma space. Small ships with advanced stealth technology had slipped past border patrols. Teams of human soldiers, each one a volunteer who knew they might never come home, had landed on 3 Nigma worlds. They did not attack military targets. Not yet. Instead, they watched. They learned. They mapped every defense, every patrol route, every weakness. They made contact with the slave species that the Nigma had conquered. They whispered promises of freedom. And far from Nigma space, in the deep darkness between stars, humanity's true response was gathering. It was called the 7th Extinction Fleet. The name was not chosen by accident. In Earth's history, there had been 6 mass extinction events, times when most life on the planet had died. The 7th extinction would be different. It would not be caused by asteroids or volcanoes. It would be caused by human hands. And it would target only one species. Admiral Marcus Webb stood on the bridge of the fleet's flagship, the Remembrance. He was an old man with white hair and eyes that had seen too much death. He had hoped to retire in peace. Instead, he had been called back to lead humanity's response. Around his ship, over 300 warships were assembling. Carriers, battleships, destroyers, and dozens of specialized vessels. Each one was crewed by volunteers who understood what they were about to do. This would not be a war of defense. Humanity had tried defense. They had tried warnings. They had tried giving the Nigma every chance to walk away. Now they would try something else. Admiral, his communications officer said, we have received confirmation. All civilian evacuation from border colonies is complete. Our people are safe. Webb nodded slowly. And the special operations teams? In position and awaiting orders. The Admiral looked at the star map showing Nigma space. Hundreds of worlds. Billions of Nigma, a civilization that had stood for thousands of years, built on the corpses of conquered species. Send the signal, Webb said quietly. Operation Extinction begins in 48 hours. His officers carried out the order without hesitation. They did not enjoy what they were about to do. None of them did. But the Nigma had made their choice. They had attacked human civilians. They had shown that they would never stop, never negotiate, never see other species as anything but prey. There was only one way to deal with a predator that would not stop hunting. You had to become a bigger predator. The humans had spent 800 years among the stars pretending to be sheep. Now the galaxy was about to remember why Earth's children had never actually been prey. They had always been wolves, and the wolves were hungry. Scholar Vexthal was not a warrior. She was a historian, one of the few Nigma who studied other species instead of conquering them. Most of her people thought she was strange. Why learn about the weak? The weak existed only to serve the strong, but something about the humans bothered her. After the reports from New Carthage, she began to research them seriously. What she found made her blood run cold. The other species in the galaxy had evolved on gentle worlds, worlds with stable climates and plenty of food. They had developed intelligence slowly, peacefully. War, when it came, was rare and limited. Humans were different. Their homeworld, Earth, was a death trap. The climate changed constantly. Ice ages came and went. Predators roamed every continent. Disease killed millions. Natural disasters destroyed entire civilizations. And through it all, humans had not just survived. They had thrived. They had done it by being more dangerous than anything else on their planet. Vexthal read about their history and felt genuine fear for the first time in her life. These creatures had spent their entire existence fighting, not just against nature, but against each other. They had invented weapons that could destroy entire cities. They had created poisons that could kill millions. They had developed strategies for total war that made Nigma conquest look like children's games. And then, somehow, they had stopped. 300 years before they reached the stars, humans had looked at what they had become and chosen to change. They had built a unified government. They had ended most of their internal wars. They had turned their intelligence towards science, medicine, and exploration. But they had not forgotten how to fight. They had simply locked that knowledge away, hoping they would never need it again. The Nigma had just given them a reason to remember. Vexthal rushed to the High Council with her findings. She demanded an audience with Kethvorn himself. When she stood before the High Executor, she tried to explain what she had learned. "We must stop the invasion," she said. "The humans are not what they appear to be. They are predators, apex predators. They simply choose not to hunt." Kethvorn looked at her with contempt. "You are a coward, scholar. You see soft creatures with no claws, and you imagine them as threats. The humans could not even defend a farming colony. They did not try to defend it. They evacuated their people and left traps. That is what hunters do. They do not waste strength on battles they cannot win. They wait for the right moment and then they strike." "Enough." Kethvorn waved his claw dismissively. "The invasion fleet launches in 3 days. You will see how wrong you are when we parade human slaves through this very chamber." Vexthal left the council feeling sick. She had tried to warn them. They would not listen. Now she could only watch and hope she was wrong. She was not wrong. Across Nigma space, strange things were beginning to happen. Supply ships disappeared without a trace. Communication arrays stopped working for hours at a time, then came back online as if nothing had happened. Military officers vanished from their quarters, leaving no signs of struggle. On the slave worlds, whispers spread among the conquered species. "The humans are coming. The humans will free us. Be ready." The Nigma security forces tried to stop the rumors, but they spread too fast. Slaves who had been broken for generations suddenly had hope in their eyes. They began to hide weapons, to memorize patrol schedules, to identify which Nigma guards were cruel and which might be spared. No one knew how the human operatives had made contact with so many slaves. The Nigma had controlled these worlds for centuries. Their security was supposed to be perfect, but somehow, impossibly, the humans had slipped through. The first major battle came when the Nigma invasion fleet was halfway to human space. A human fleet appeared from behind a gas giant where they had been hiding. There were only 50 ships against 200 Nigma warships. The Nigma commander laughed and ordered an attack. The laughter died quickly. Human ships did not fight like other species. They did not form neat lines and exchange fire at long range. They flew in chaotic patterns, using asteroids and debris as cover. They targeted engines and weapon systems instead of going for kills. They used electronic warfare to blind Nigma sensors and confuse their communications. And they did not care about honor. When a human ship was badly damaged, it did not try to retreat. Instead, it would accelerate toward the nearest Nigma vessel and self-destruct, taking the enemy with it. The Nigma had never seen anything like it. What kind of species would sacrifice themselves so readily? The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the humans had lost 30 ships. The Nigma had lost 80. It was supposed to be impossible. The Nigma had 4 times the numbers. They should have won easily. Kethvorn received the news in his throne room. For the first time, he did not feel certain of victory. "How?" he demanded. "How did they do this?" His generals had no answer. The humans fought in ways they did not understand. They broke every rule of warfare that the Nigma knew, and they seemed completely unafraid of death. Meanwhile, on the human side, Admiral Webb was reviewing the battle reports. He had lost good people. Every death was a weight on his soul. But the plan was working. The Nigma fleet is regrouping, his tactical officer reported. They are continuing toward human space, but their formation is more cautious now. Good, Webb said. They are learning fear. Now we teach them despair. He opened a channel to his Special Operations Commander. Colonel Santos, begin Phase 2. On 3 Nigma worlds, human teams emerged from hiding at the same moment. They struck military communication centers, fuel depots, and sensor arrays. They did not try to hold territory. They hit fast, destroyed their targets, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. On the slave worlds, the uprisings began. Species that the Nigma had conquered rose up with weapons that seemed to appear from nowhere. They knew exactly where to strike, exactly when the guards changed, exactly which ships in orbit were real threats, and which were decoys. Within a week, the Nigma Empire was on fire. Keth Vorn stood in his war room, watching his empire begin to collapse. Reports came in faster than he could process them. A supply base destroyed here, a rebellion suppressed there, only to have 3 more spring up elsewhere. Ships vanishing, soldiers dying. How are they doing this? He screamed at his advisors. How do they know where to strike? No one could answer him. The truth was something the Nigma could not understand. The humans had not sent an army to invade. They had sent an idea. They had told the conquered species that freedom was possible, and that idea was more dangerous than any weapon. Vexthal watched from her research chamber as everything she had predicted came true. She felt no satisfaction, only sadness for all the death that was coming. We could have walked away, she whispered to herself. They gave us every chance to walk away, but the Nigma did not walk away from anything. It was not in their nature. Now they would learn what was in human nature, and the lesson would be written in blood. The Battle of Keth Prime would be remembered for 1,000 years. Keth Prime was the heart of the Nigma Empire. It was a fortress world, covered with military bases and orbital weapons platforms. The Nigma had spent centuries building its defenses. They believed it was unconquerable. Admiral Webb looked at it through the main screen of the Remembrance and saw nothing but a target. His fleet had grown during the campaign. Ships from a dozen species had joined the human force, former slaves who had escaped Nigma worlds, species that the Nigma had threatened but not yet conquered. Even a few vessels from the Veth and the Crystalline Accord, sent quietly without official approval. 342 ships, his executive officer reported, against approximately 500 Nigma vessels and 600 orbital platforms. Acceptable odds, Webb replied. His officers knew better than to question him. They had learned to trust the Admiral's strategies, even when they seemed insane. The Nigma were waiting for them. Keth Vorn himself had come to Keth Prime to lead the defense. He stood on his command ship, watching the human fleet approach. They are fools, he declared. They throw themselves against our strongest position. We will crush them here, and then we will burn their worlds to ash. The battle began at dawn, local time. The human fleet did not attack directly. Instead, they split into 3 groups and began circling the planet at different angles. The Nigma tried to engage each group, but the humans kept moving, never staying in one place long enough for a real fight. Hours passed. The Nigma grew frustrated. Their warriors wanted to close with the enemy and fight properly, but the humans would not let them. They are cowards, Keth Vorn spat. They dance around like insects. Then, without warning, one of the human groups made a direct run at the planet. Every Nigma ship in range turned to intercept. The orbital platforms opened fire. For a moment, it looked like the humans had made a fatal mistake, but the run was a trick. While the Nigma focused on the attacking group, the other 2 human forces hit them from behind. The Nigma formation shattered. Ships that had turned to face the decoy now found enemies behind them. The neat lines of defense collapsed into chaos. And then the human ground forces landed. They came down in drop pods that burned through the atmosphere like falling stars. 10,000 soldiers, hitting military targets across the planet's surface. They did not try to capture territory. They targeted command centers, power stations, and communication hubs. On his command ship, Keth Vorn watched in disbelief as his perfect defense crumbled. Pull back the fleet, his advisor urged. We can regroup and... No. Keth Vorn's voice was hard as stone. We do not retreat. All ships, attack the human flagship, kill their admiral. It was exactly what Webb had been waiting for. The Nigma fleet abandoned its defensive positions and charged toward the Remembrance. They were driven by rage and pride, thinking only of destroying the human leader. They did not notice that they were flying into a trap. The human forces fell back slowly, drawing the Nigma deeper and deeper into a narrow corridor of space between two asteroid fields. When the Nigma fleet was fully committed, the asteroids came alive. Human ships had been hiding among the rocks for days, their systems powered down, invisible to sensors. Now they powered up and opened fire from both sides. The Nigma were caught in a crossfire with nowhere to run. The slaughter lasted 4 hours. Keth Vorn's command ship was one of the last to fall. When human Marines boarded the vessel, they found the High Executor in his throne room, surrounded by the bodies of his guards. He had killed them himself when they suggested surrender. "You cannot win," Keth Vorn said as human soldiers surrounded him. "Even if you destroy our fleet, our people will never stop fighting. We will never surrender." The Marine commander, a woman named Lieutenant Chen, a distant relative of the ambassador, looked at him without emotion. "We know," she said. "That is why we are not asking for surrender." She raised her weapon. Across the Empire, the same scene was playing out. Nigma military forces were being destroyed one by one. Not captured, destroyed. The humans showed no mercy to warriors who would not lay down their weapons. But to civilians, they were different. On world after world, human forces secured areas and then broadcast a simple message: if you do not fight, you will not be harmed. The war is with your military, not your people. Many Nigma did not believe it. They attacked anyway, and they died. But some were too young, too old, or too sick to fight. These found themselves under human protection, given food and medical care by the same species that had just destroyed their defenders. It confused them. The Nigma did not understand mercy. They did not understand the difference between warrior and civilian. In their culture, everyone was part of the war. Humans saw things differently. Admiral Webb walked through a camp of Nigma refugees on a conquered world. He saw a young Nigma, barely more than children, staring at him with a mixture of fear and confusion. One of them approached him. "Why do you not kill us?" it asked. "We would have killed you." Webb looked at the young Nigma for a long moment. "Because we are not you," he said simply. "We fight because we have to, not because we want to. And when the fighting is done, we stop." "I do not understand." "I know, but maybe someday you will." The war lasted 3 more months. Every Nigma military force was hunted down and destroyed. Every fortress fell. Every warship was captured or vaporized. When it was over, the Nigma Empire existed only in history. But the Nigma people survived. Humans established a provisional government on the former Nigma worlds. They demilitarized the population, taking away all weapons and military technology. They set up schools and hospitals. They began the long process of teaching a warrior species how to live in peace. Many said it was impossible. The Nigma were too aggressive, too violent, too proud. They would never accept being conquered. But the humans were patient. They had done this before, to themselves. They knew that any species could change, if given enough time and the right guidance. Scholar Vex Thal became one of the first Nigma to work with the human administration. She helped translate, explained Nigma culture, and worked to bridge the gap between conqueror and conquered. "Why did you spare us?" she asked a human official one day. "You could have killed every last Nigma. You had the power." The official, an older man with tired eyes, shook his head. "Power is not the same as right. We had the power to destroy you. We did not have the right. Your warriors chose to fight, and they died for that choice. Your civilians did not choose. They should not pay for the crimes of their leaders. My people would not have shown the same mercy. We know. That is why we won." Vexthal thought about that for a long time. She was beginning to understand something about humans that most Nigma never would. They were not weak because they showed mercy. They were strong because they could destroy everything and choose not to. That kind of strength was more terrifying than any claw or weapon. The Nigma had been the predators of the galaxy for thousands of years, but they had never met anything like humans, and now they never would again. 2 years had passed since the fall of the Nigma Empire. The Galactic Council chamber looked the same as it always had. The ancient black walls still absorbed the light. The circular rows of seats still rose toward the ceiling. But everything had changed. The Nigma section was nearly empty now. Only a handful of representatives sat there, civilians who had been chosen to speak for what remained of their people. They wore simple clothes instead of military armor. They sat in their seats instead of standing. They did not look at the other species with contempt. They looked at them with something new. Respect, maybe even fear. Ambassador Alara Chen walked down to the central platform. She was older now, her hair completely white, but her eyes were still calm and steady. She had seen the war from beginning to end. She had watched millions die. She had signed the orders that ended an empire, and she had not slept well since. Honored members of the council, she began. I come before you today to present what humanity calls the Terran Doctrine. It is a promise and a warning, written in the blood of the Nigma War. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of species from 100 worlds. Humanity does not seek conquest. We do not want territory, or slaves, or tribute. We want only to live in peace, to explore the stars, to trade and learn and grow alongside our fellow species. A pause. But we have learned that some species see peace as weakness. Some species will not stop attacking until they are stopped. The Nigma were such a species. We gave them every chance to walk away. They chose war. The chamber was completely silent. So here is our promise. Any species that attacks human civilians, any species that raids our colonies or murders our children, will face the full response of human military power. We will not negotiate. We will not accept tribute. We will continue fighting until the threat is completely removed. She let those words hang in the air. This is not a threat. It is a fact. We proved it with the Nigma. We will prove it again if necessary. An elderly Veth representative stood slowly. Ambassador Chen. Many of us have wondered. You humans hide so much of your true nature. You present yourselves as peaceful traders, but we have seen now what you truly are. Why do you pretend? Ilara considered the question carefully. Because we do not like what we are capable of, counselor. We have spent centuries trying to become better than our ancestors. We have built societies based on law and compassion, instead of violence. We chose to lock away the part of us that could destroy everything. But you kept the key. Yes, we kept the key. Because the universe is dangerous, and sometimes peaceful species need to defend themselves. She turned to look at the former Nigma representatives. They stared back at her with expressions she could not read. We take no pleasure in what we did to your empire, she told them directly. Every death weighs on us. The humans who fought in your space will carry those memories for the rest of their lives. Many of them have not been able to return to normal life. They sacrificed their peace of mind to keep our people safe. One of the Nigma, a young female named Kexthana, stood. My entire family was military. My parents, my siblings, my children. They are all dead. The chamber grew tense. Human security officers shifted slightly, ready to react. But Kexthana did not attack. She simply looked at Alara with those red eyes that showed so much more emotion than they used to. I should hate you, she said. Every part of my nature tells me to hate you, to seek revenge, to continue the war even if it kills me. I would understand if you did, Alara replied, but I have been learning. The humans who administer my homeworld have been kind. They feed us. They treat our sick. They teach our young. I do not understand why. Alara walked closer to the young Nigma. The security officers looked worried, but she waved them back. Because we believe that any species can change, she said softly. We changed. 1,000 years ago, humans were destroying their own planet with war and pollution. We nearly killed ourselves, but we found a way to become better. We think you can too. Why do you care what we become? We tried to destroy you. Because hate is exhausting, Kexthana. Revenge is a poison that kills the one who drinks it. We defeated your military. If we spend the next century hating your people, what have we gained? Nothing but more pain. The young Nigma stared at her for a long moment. Then she did something no Nigma had ever done in this chamber. She bowed her head in a gesture of respect. I do not know if my people can truly change, she said, but I will try. For my children who died, and for the children who will be born, I will try. Alara felt tears forming in her eyes, but she held them back. That is all we ask. The council session ended soon after. But the conversations it started would continue for years. Many species looked at humanity differently now. Some with fear, some with respect, some with both. The Veth speaker had been right all those years ago. Humans were terrifying. But they were also something else. They were hopeful. On a small colony in what used to be Nigma space, a young Nigma girl sat in a classroom with children from a dozen species. A human teacher stood at the front, showing them pictures of Earth, beautiful blue oceans, green forests, cities full of light. "This is where my people come from," the teacher said. "We almost destroyed it once, but we learned to take care of it instead." The Nigma girl raised her hand. "Why did you stop destroying it?" The teacher smiled sadly. "Because we realized that destruction is easy. Anyone can break things. It takes real strength to build things, to protect things, to choose peace when war is easier." "Is that why you did not kill all of us?" "Yes. You are not your warriors. Your children are not responsible for what your generals did. You deserve the chance to become something better." The girl thought about this for a long time. Around her, children from species that had once been Nigma slaves sat peacefully, learning alongside the children of their former masters. It would have been impossible 2 years ago. Now it was just another day, far away. In the great hall of the Galactic Council, a new delegation had arrived. They were from a distant empire, aggressive and powerful. They demanded tribute from the smaller species. They threatened war. Ambassador Chen stood before them with the same calm eyes she had shown the Nigma 2 years before. "Before you make any decisions," she said, "let me tell you a story about the Nigma Empire." The delegation listened. They had heard rumors, of course. Everyone in the galaxy had heard rumors, but hearing the details from a human, seeing the quiet confidence in her eyes, was something else entirely. When she finished, the leader of the delegation was very pale. "We meant no offense," he said quickly. "Perhaps we can discuss trade agreements instead of tribute." Alara smiled. It was not a warm smile. "Perhaps we can." Outside the council chamber, the stars continued to shine. Somewhere out there, human ships patrolled the borders of known space. Human scientists explored new worlds. Human families raised their children and hoped for a peaceful future. They were not wolves anymore. They were not sheep either. They were something in between. Creatures who could choose violence but preferred peace. Predators who had learned to build instead of destroy. The galaxy was learning to live with them. And in the end, that was the real lesson of the Nigma War. Not that humans were dangerous. Everyone knew that now. The real lesson was that even the most dangerous species in the galaxy could choose to be kind. That was what made them truly terrifying and truly wonderful. The end.